everyone, I'm so glad that you share your time with me here at MoonCom, especially because it's a special conference for me because it's the first conference in person since basically a year. Yeah, COVID hits hard, so I'm super glad that you are here with me. And yeah, as we heard lots of interesting things about migration, testing should be a wonderful thing to buy you some time, buy you some confidence, and yeah. This is the point where I want to share some things with you, especially some things where I screwed up, so you can be a better person than me and not screwing up the way I do. So I know that sounds harsh when it comes to myself, but well, I hope to learn from my past mistakes together with you also. Let's get started. Let me introduce me and my talk this way. Hello, I'm Ramona and welcome to the premiere episode of Mo Presents Fun with Tests. Well, a little side note, Mo is a nickname of me, as you know now. But I will stop being silly for a moment and will get serious. I am a software developer at Shopware, especially when it comes to front-end tasks. But I have some couple of years experience when it comes to quality assurance, so I know both views of the product, that of a tester and of a developer. And thus I strive to make the experience of both better, may it be tester or developer experience. So that's a passion of me and I hope you can share it here. There's another thing you might need to want to know from me. I'm a huge movie nerd, and there are a couple of movies I love watching, especially in my childhood. And some of them, I rewatched them lots of time, and I think too much sometimes, I don't know. One franchise you might have heard about is Star Wars. And one quote in particular of those films stick into my mind. It's from the 1983 movie Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and it's a trap. Well, my worse and horrible mimicking skills aside, it's a memorable quote by Admiral Akbar, the leader of the Mon-Calamari rebels. And he said it during the Battle of Endor, where the aliens mobilized its forces in a concerted effort to destroy the Death Star. And Akbar encounters an unexpected ambush then, which leads him to his exclaim, this trap. Well, you might wonder now, what does it have to do with testing? And I want to say to you, yes, it has something to do with testing, because it's a nice allegory when it comes to testing and some issues and some things I experienced myself. I have to be honest with that. Sorry. Testing has so many perks and advantages, and I think I don't need to convince you about that. If I need to, please come to me after the talk and we will talk about that and discuss it with a beer or the cola or whatever you want to drink. It doesn't matter which perks or values I want to tell you. All of them can be overshadowed though by pain points and pitfalls and traps caused of various reasons. Many of them can be really considered traps and they feel like an ambush. Think about all those things which you think would be good and which you did in best intentions, but turning out painful and backfiring in the long run, or even earlier if you're encountering Murphy's Law or stuff like that. Maybe you feel that way. Should I start with the pain points? I don't want to trigger you, but I have 3 of them which came to me and my experience and coming back to me again still when it comes to testing. Especially when I look at all the things I did and did wrong in my beginning of my career and all the legacy code I wrote years ago. First being slow tests. Imagine you finished a wonderful feature, you implemented one of them really, really nice, or finished a ticket and you need to wait hours or even days for the test suite to complete and you can't get it to be merged and to be done, and it's annoying. It's exhausting and annoying and I hate it. Same with the second one. Tests which are painful and annoying to maintain. I particularly think about the tests I don't understand now when I look at them a month later. Or all the fellow team members and co-workers asking me what I thought or what I wanted to do with this test here, and I don't have any answer. Well, it's all of those tests where you read through lots of codes, classes, abstractions, basically plain chaos. You don't want to have that. You really don't want to. Next one, last but not least, are my, I don't think I can call it kryptonite, but something which hurts me a lot and still. Tests to give you no value or any clear result at all. You may call them highs and fails or highs and tests. It's like the famous Heisenberg, which only occurs if you look away, don't measure things, or in our case, don't debug anything. And that being said, we aim boss flaky tests. Non-determinant tests who fail to deliver the same correct value in between bills when you don't change anything. One time they pass, one time they fail, then they pass at the, I don't know, 10 times or whatever. You cannot trust them at all, and trust me, this is the hugest pain in my life to deal with those tests and to debug them especially. Well, I should talk a lot now, but let me make one thing straight. It doesn't have to be that way. Test and handling can be fun, and we just need to keep our eyes on some things beforehand, of course, because we can prevent much pain when we are about to write tests. And if the damage has been done, of course, when you are facing a legacy code base, I'm afraid you need to refactor, but well, you can do something against those pain points. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity to give you a little bit of context of my daily business, my daily doing when I'm working at test at Shopware. My background is Jest framework for unit and integration tests, and Cypress framework for end-to-end testing. So the following code examples and snippets will be made from those frameworks, but I try my best to stay abstract and general as possible so that you're able to use my advice in other frameworks as well. Same, if I fail to do so, please come back to me at the end of the talk so I can learn from you as well. I love to learn, so yeah. As that to be in theory, let's start with the pitfalls. And of course, this one is a cause of a pitfall, you might say, but it's a mindset I want to show you, which you need to keep in mind about the test. Imagine the following situation. You are working on your code, you are implementing a wonderful feature, and your brain is full with the main production code and all the tasks you need to do, and you don't have any headspace left for additional complexity, especially if additional complexity means testing. So it's really important for testing that it won't eat too much headspace. If it does, it's against the intent of testing and cause teams to even abandon it, and we don't need to. So first thing first, the most important thing is one golden rule. Joni Goldberg, who's an author of a wonderful testing guide, described it as a golden rule for everything when it comes to testing. It's this one. Here's the principle, or keep it simple, stupid. Tests should be designed plain simple in every case, with no exception. It doesn't matter if it's a unit test or an end-to-end test. One should look at the test and get its intent and its meaning instantly. To achieve that, you need to keep something in mind. Of course, you need to treat your testing code with the same care, with the same meaning of your production code, but it's not the same. Some best practices you would apply to the production code and are conflicting to this golden rule of simplicity. My most used example to explain that is duplication. Duplication may be okay when used in tests if it means that your test is easier to understand, so please leave it that way. If removing it would mean that your test is difficult to read. So I advise you to use less to no abstractions at all. And if you need to be cautious, if you are using commands or page object with naming and stuff like that, so your test stays easy to understand. I like to summarize it with the term flat test design, or being minimalistic when it comes to your tests, so test just as much as you need. So your test will stay delightful to work with. Okay, enough theory now, let's get to code snippets. This is a little trap. Please look at the title here, which I marked in blue color. When looking at the test, do you know what it wants to accomplish? Of course, it said through an error, but which error does it throw? When does error is thrown? You don't get any detail or any context when it comes to the test. So if you see your CI logs and have 10 tests of your error, it won't help you at all. So remember our golden rule, you should know instantly what your test is doing. So I advise you to do the following things to improve. It's the 3-part rule by Roy Osherov. It will help you keep your test clear and basically state in a good way what your test wants to cover and accomplish. It's well known for unit testing, but it won't be bad if you keep it in mind for end-to-end testing as well. And it says you need to get 3 things inside of the title of your test. The first being what is being tested. In our example here, it's property. Second one being under what circumstances and scenario would be tested. Like in our case, usage of the deprecated property. And C, and last one, what's the expected result? And that's the old aspect of the title, error throw. And I know, it's a long test title, I know, but test name is long. Longcat likes long test title because it knows what the test does. So please be okay with long test title as soon as you like to maintain our handleable space in a more meaningful and more funnier way. So I think it's good to have no need to read through long logs to get the intent of our tests. Alright, next one. Look at this test. Can you say in the first second what it wants to accomplish? If yes, congratulations, I adore you because you are really fast and clever. But if not, you're still fast and clever because it's quite normal to not get this test in first intent because its test structure is a mess. You have declarations, assertions, actions all over the place and written when needed, not with any clear structure. So how can we change it to be more easier to understand? Here it's the AAA, or I don't know if it's AAA or AAA pattern. I say AAA because it's easier for me. Those 3 letters stand for arrange, act, assert. This pattern is relevant from unit testing. It's difficult to use it for longer integration or end-to-end tests because they seem to be longer when it comes to lines. So it's a bit more difficult to put it in this way, but especially in unit tests, you structure your tests in 3 parts. The first being the arrange word. So the arrange takes care of all the setup, everything you need to bring the system to in order that you can simulate the test. It could be variables or starting mocking any preparation you need to do. The second one being act. It's basically running your unit under test, so you can do your steps, actions, whatever you need to get to your results that you want to assert on. And the assert is the last part of the AAA rule. Quite self-explanatory. You do the assertions and checks you need of your test scenario. Yes. Next one, wrap the next strap. This image looks peaceful and friendly and wonderful. 2 people with lots of love sharing one paper or whatever it is. However, there might be a rude awakening because if you refer that to testing, the 2 people represent tests and the paper representing test data. So I want to show you 2 tests sharing the same test data or the same seed, or worse, 2 tests relying on another previous test. And this can cause huge problems, believe me, because it can lead to flakiness due to side effects. Imagine if the previous test failed, which you are depending on, or the test data gets corrupted, your tests will all fail. Or think about tests running in random order. If they are dependent on the previous tests, they will fail again, and well, not in every case, and debugging gets huge pain. So how do we deal with such problems? Well, I'm a great friend for isolated test data, so I try to keep my tests as isolated as possible to prevent any side effect from harming my test. This is an example by an end-to-end test I used to write when it comes to the shopware core, which basically deals with customer login in the storefront. So the first thing I will do is using the before each hook so that I can keep it safe that those steps are executed before every test, without an exception. And there my first action would be resetting shopware to the clean installation. clean slate, nothing adjusted or whatever. And this way I have always the same basis and everything what happened before is gone. Afterwards, because of course we need some data to work with, in the login scenario you need a customer to log in, so I will create this customer beforehand via API. It's faster, and yeah, this is a point where being headless is quite an advantage when it comes to test data provide. Alright, so the isolation is done, and we can basically start the test with the login. Alright, for the next step, we have a little guest. It's BB8. You found a name inside of your source code, which might be familiar to us as a developer, but not to BB8. It's this wonderful string foobar. And even if you know that foobar is used for placeholder strings, do you know if that's a product or a forename or a last name, first name, customer? Nobody knows what foobar is really, except the one who created it, and I don't think he knows it in 1 year. So we need to try to avoid those placeholder strings and use realistic test data. Test data which could be found inside of every job or any application. This one is a Cypress test. I think this example is perfect for an end test, but you can use it in any test where you need test data, so it's not limited to that. This test in particular should check if a product can be created and read. And in it, I want to use name and placeholders to a real product. Let's think about a t-shirt named T-shirt Akbar, what a coincidence, or a manufacturer named Space Company. If you read this test, you instantly know what I want to do with that. So, good rule accomplished. Of course, you don't need to be creative for any test data you want to set. So you can use Faker to generate this data or even import it from your production state if you want. But as you see, I want to stick to this golden rule for easy tests, even when it comes to naming. Alright. New trap, same test. You see some selectors I marked in blue. There are CSS selectors targeting CSS classes. You might think now, okay, what's so problematic with using CSS selectors? Does Ramona at Shopware use CSS selectors as well? Yes, I do, from other reasons, but I'm not a great fan of it because they are prone to change. If you change some styling or refactor your application, your classes might change, and so does your test will fail. But your test won't fail because of a bug, but because your test is outdated, which doesn't give you the information if your product is really broken or just your test. This is a problem called testing implementation detail you need to avoid. A test failing without a bug is a false positive and giving no reliable report of your application. In this case, of course, the threat refers mainly to end-to-end tests, but even component tests on an integration level can be affected as well, as soon as you need selector to begin with. So please don't do that. Instead, you should use the things or selectors of the things a user would call attention to. For example, just use the strings of the button, like this button or add to cart or whatever. Of course, text might change as well, and then you have the same problem again. So my favorite choice would be using data attributes. Maybe naming them data CY for Cypress or data test suite. I don't know what you like most. Because the developer knows, okay, this attribute is meant for testing and it won't change that much as a CSS selector or maybe an ID would do. So this might be quite bulletproof, and it's also mentioned in Cypress best practices. Alright, I'm so sorry for the next one, because I tend to annoy people with that, and if someone does such a thing with this wait command inside of a pull request I need to approve, we won't get any approval. And they hate me because of that, but I need to introduce this trap as well. It's about this fixed waiting times. Please never, 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 never use fixed waiting times, because in the best case, if you can call it best case because it's still worse, but you will wait too long and you will slow your tests down without any necessity. So in this case, it's even in the Cypress command I use really often, so my whole test suite will be slowed down way too much. And this is the best case. The worst case being waiting too less time. Imagine your application under load, and then the test says, okay, my element is not visible, I'm failing, but it should just wait a bit more longer. So sometimes it will fail, causing flakiness, causing headache for you. So please don't do that if you like being healthy and having no headache. Right. Fortunately, there are lots of ways, depending on framework, but there are lots of ways to avoid fixed waiting times and keeping your tests as fast and efficient as possible. I prefer more deterministic methods that most platforms provide, but two are my favorite ones. The first is similar to one I mentioned before with the selectors. It's about, waiting for things which a user will take attention to. Waiting for changes in the UI. I'm thinking of animations to stop or loading spinner to disappear, some elements to get visible, stuff like that. Like a real user would do as well. Or even better, which is one of my favorite Cypress features, wait for API requests and their responses, including the status codes. This can enable you to wait really efficiently as long as your data is available to be tested or to be asserted on. So this way, your test will be stable and reliable, managing time efficiently and fast, like this bad boy here. Okay. A moment. There we are. Let's go back to Akbar now. The Battle of Endor turned out to be a success, with lots of teamworks and a couple of mergers. And it wasn't easy, but it was a success. Refer that to testing. It might be a lot to do, especially when it comes to legacy code. It will need a change of mindset when it comes to test design, or lots of refactoring, but it's worth it in the end, and you will see the results quite early. If there's one thing I want you to keep in mind when it comes to my talk, is the golden rule we talked about earlier. All of my examples pay into that, and all of the pain points emerge from it if you ignore it. I want to summarize it in the following sentence. The test should be an assistant to you, a friendly assistant, no hindrance. And I think it sums it up quite well. The test should feel like a routine and not like solving a complex mathematical formula or something more exhausting. So let's give our best to exceed that. See, RTD2 is catching lots with ease here, and I want you to feel like that as well, so that dealing with tests, maintaining them, learning about them will be fun and not that painful as it may used to be. So yeah, I hope I was able to give you my common testing pitfalls I encountered. I'm guilty, I know. I hope you won't do them again, stuff like that. But I'm not a subject matter expert. These are the experience I did. So if you got other testing pitfall traps worth mentioning, or anything when it comes to this topic, please talk to me and let's discuss it with beer or Coke or wine or whatever. So that being said, what else can I say than thank you? Thank you for your time, for listening, and if you got questions, you know where to find me. And again, thank you for being here for my first conference in person since years.